When I told my wife, the message came at 2:14 a.m. No greeting, no explanation, just a string of words that sat on the screen like a blade left carelessly on the table. You shouldn't be proud of paying her way. She belongs to us, not you. I stared at it, the glow of the phone spilling across my hand. Her name at the top, my wife. The silence of the bedroom pressed in. She lay beside me, turned toward the wall, her breathing slow and even, like a woman who had been asleep for hours. I read the message again. The words didn't belong to the woman lying next to me, not in tone, not in cadence. They carried a cruelty that she usually wrapped in silk. This was naked, raw, like a truth slipped out in the dark when she thought no one would ever see. I had paid for her sister's law school, every semester, every book, every bar prep fee. I had done it quietly, dutifully, because family, she said, because it mattered, because it was the right thing. And when I had told her, just a week before, that I was excited to attend her sister's graduation, she hadn't even turned her head. It was last week, she had said. Her eyes never left her phone. Paying her fees doesn't make you that important. The words carved through me then, but I swallowed them, like always. Now, the midnight message pulsed on my screen. Confirmation, proof. Not a slip of the tongue, not thoughtlessness, but intention. They had erased me. And I knew, even then, before the rest of it unraveled, this wasn't about tuition, or family, or pride. It was about betrayal. I replayed her words over and over. It was last week. Paying her fees doesn't make you that important. At first, I tried to convince myself I was overreacting, that perhaps I had misheard, that her coldness was stress, that the message wasn't hers, or maybe a bad joke. But the human mind has a way of pulling threads once a hole appears. I remembered the way she always shielded her phone with the back of her hand, as though light itself could betray her. The sudden bursts of laughter when she thought I wasn't listening. The secretive, brittle silences when I entered the room. And her sister, always present, always defended, always given more consideration than me. There had been an intimacy between them I couldn't name. Not quite inappropriate, not quite ordinary. The way they looked at each other, long and knowing. The way conversations ended abruptly when I walked in. I had thought, naively, that they were simply close. Sisters bound by shared blood and secrets I didn't deserve to know. But the graduation, the ceremony I wasn't told about, the way she dismissed me, it began to form a pattern, a cruel geometry that placed me always outside the circle. I had paid, I had supported, I had believed, and yet I was invisible, or worse, irrelevant. The question sharpened, unbidden in the back of my skull. Why erase me? The answer felt heavier than any betrayal I had prepared myself for. And once the suspicion sank its claws in, I could no longer let go. I didn't confront her, not immediately. Confrontation is noise. It gives the guilty a chance to rehearse their denials, to twist, to bend, to fabricate. I preferred silence. Silence is sharper. Silence cuts unseen. So I began watching. I checked phone records, not hers, but the joint account we shared. The calls told their own story. Long stretches of time spent with one number. Always late, always when I wasn't present. Her sister's number. The pattern stretched back months, maybe years. I remembered the nights she claimed she was staying late at the firm. The mornings she said she fell asleep at her desk. The weekends she told me she needed sister time. The puzzle assembled itself piece by piece. I requested a copy of the tuition statements, not from her, but directly from the bursar's office, a courtesy extended to the man who paid every invoice. And there, in black and white, I saw the notes, multiple payments made not from my account, but reimbursed later from hers. Odd transfers, private arrangements, quiet shifting of funds that didn't need to be hidden, unless they did. Still, suspicion isn't enough. Suspicion leaves room for denial. I needed something irrefutable. So I hired someone. Not for her, for the sister. Because betrayal rarely travels alone. It spreads like disease, touching everything in its path. What he uncovered was worse than anything I could have imagined. Late-night meetings, secret trips disguised as seminars, hotel receipts under her sister's name, paid with my wife's corporate card. Every breadcrumb pointed to the same destination. The graduation wasn't just about law school, it was about a future they had built together. Without me, and I funding it all. The realization burned cold through my veins. Not anger, not grief, something deeper. Clarity. I said nothing, not yet, but I began preparing. Every document, every receipt, every email, every transfer. I collected them quietly, organized them into folders, built a case stronger than anything her sister would ever argue in court. Because this wasn't just about infidelity, it was about erasure, and erasure demands consequence. The truth arrived in a plain envelope. DNA test results. Not for her, for our son. I had sent away the swab weeks earlier when suspicion first became unbearable. The paper trembled faintly in my hand. Not mine. Not mine. 2 words that rewrote an entire decade of my life. I sat at the dining table, the report flat before me. The house was silent, the kind of silence that grows teeth. She came in from the kitchen, casual, humming under her breath. She saw me sitting there, saw the envelope, and I watched the color drain from her face. I didn't speak. I slid the paper across the table, slowly, like evidence presented in a courtroom. Her eyes scanned it. I saw the moment of recognition, the collapse, the denial she couldn't muster. Tears formed, but they didn't move me. Tears are a language of manipulation, not remorse. "Please," she whispered. I said nothing. The silence told her everything. I already knew. Her composure shattered, words tumbling from her mouth in a rush. Excuses, justifications, explanations that hung limp in the air. I let her drown in them, because the truth was heavier than anything she could spin. And in that moment, the power shifted. She had erased me from their lives, but I had erased her illusions. I did not shout, I did not rage. I simply began dismantling her life, piece by piece. The law firm she prided herself on? I was their largest client, through real estate holdings she barely understood. With one call, I terminated every contract, every retainer, every stream of revenue her name was tied to. The properties she and her sister had quietly funneled resources into, using my money, under shell accounts they thought I would never find, I froze them, filed injunctions, turned every deed into quicksand beneath their feet. When she begged, days later, after the reality settled, she clutched my arm like a drowning woman. Her voice cracked, desperate. "Please, reverse it. We'll lose everything." I looked at her, calm, cold. "You already did," I said. Her sister called me, pleaded, promised things she thought could sway me. Her voice shook, not with love, but with fear. They had built their empire on my foundation, and now, with the stroke of a pen, I had reduced it to rubble. And when they asked me to undo it, to repair what I had broken, I said the only word that mattered: no. A month later, I watched from a distance as their lives collapsed. The sister's law career crumbled before it began, her reputation poisoned by whispers, her debts exposed. My wife's firm, once proud, reduced to nothing more than a memory, clients scattering like frightened birds. They had begged, they had wept, they had promised reform. But I felt nothing. Because the truth is simple. Betrayal isn't an act, it's a choice. and choices demand consequence. I no longer live in that house. I no longer carry their names, their weight, their shadows. I live lighter now, colder perhaps, but free.